Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a brand new interview series that we're doing here at Fintech Nexus, our crypto winter podcast series that we are going to be, over the next several weeks, we are going to be interviewing a large number of people in the crypto space to sort of get their perspective on what is happening, what it really means, how bad is it, and really get their perspective on what this will mean for the future of crypto and DeFi. So with that, my name is Peter Renton. I'm chairman and co-founder of Fintech Nexus. I'll be doing a whole bunch of these. We'll have my colleague Todd Anderson will be doing some as well. And my colleague Bo Ruskern as well. So anyway, we're delighted to be joined by Kirill Bensonoff, the co-founder and CEO of New Silver. But before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we have an event coming up in London on October 17th and 18th. It's called Merge. This is all about the intersection of Web3 and traditional finance and fintech. So basically bringing those worlds together to really help all parties navigate the world, the new world that is being built before our eyes. So with that, welcome, Kirill. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Peter. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So before we get started, why don't you just give the viewers and listeners a little bit of background. Exactly what does New Silver do, and how did you kind of get involved in it?
Sure. So New Silver is a fintech startup. We are essentially a bridge loan originator for fix and flip lenders. We originate these short duration loans in the U.S. We work in about 41 different states. We've done at this point a little over 100 million worth of these loans. And I think what's interesting is we were the first real world asset to partner with a company called Centrifuge, which enables the technology, and then a protocol called MakerDAO, which is essentially the senior lender in our securitization pool of these short-term mortgages.
So let's just, before we get into the meat of the conversation, just tell us a little bit about how it works, because you've been doing this now for a while. Because I know I had you on the podcast. I think it was about a year ago, and so you'd already started then. So tell us a little about how much you've done and what just sort of what has been happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started. It's been a year since we started back in April. So a little bit over a year ago. We've done somewhere close to 50 million worth of loans securitized overall. There's probably around 30 million active right now. Some have been paying off as their short term. The way it works is essentially it looks like a traditional securitization. The whole thing was built kind of to mimic the real world securitization, but everything is done on the blockchain, with all the benefits, the speed, the transparency, et cetera. And then we also have, a protocol participating as the senior lender. So, there's a lot of differences and improvements on traditional securitization, I believe, in this structure.
Right. So obviously a lot more transparency, and I imagine lower cost once you've got it all set up, right?
That is absolutely right. I mean, it depends a little bit on what the gas costs are because it's on, at least right at this point, it's on the Ethereum blockchain. So we have to pay gas, but lately it's been very good. But even when gas fees were high, I believe it's still a lot less expensive.
Right. So have you been impacted, has New Silver been impacted by the downturn? Have you found that people are more likely to come to you because you have real world assets? It's not like you're an algorithmic stable coin, right? where there's nothing really backing it. So but tell us just how the last 3 or 4 months have been.
Yeah, I mean, New Silver is not directly impacted. I mean, we don't hold any crypto. We don't really do anything with crypto other than use DAI as a form of currency for these transactions. The impact has been more on the investors, right, the folks that are either participating or were considering participating in our offering, because we do accept accredited investors. It's not just a protocol. There's other, institutional accredited investors that can participate in the securitization offering. So that was impacted, to what degree, I'm not sure, but obviously, some folks that we talked to who are considering going in are kind of just sitting on the sidelines of everything right now, right? So they're thinking about like what's going to happen to the economy next, and they want to wait things out a little bit.
Right. Okay, so then given I know you've been involved in the crypto space for many years. You've been an enthusiast, and so a keen kind of observer of what's been going on. What do you think has been the biggest impact so far of this crypto winter that we're experiencing now?
Yeah, obviously it's a lot of people have lost capital, right? Whether it's in just a form of depreciation of the asset prices, or unfortunately with folks that were involved in Celsius and others that had issues are potentially experiencing, hopefully temporary, but experiencing issues there. So I think that was definitely, especially for retail investors, that was definitely painful. And then I think the loss of trust in a way, right? Especially after Luna, I believe that folks were talking about how DeFi is great, and I think it's still great, and certainly TradFi has been around the block, but there's many issues remaining. And with DeFi, we're kind of going around the block, maybe the first or the second time at this point, and there are still many issues remaining, and some companies are gonna become insolvent. Some companies are gonna have issues, but certainly shakes the foundation of what people have hoped and believed to be a better opportunity for earning money in some way.
Right. Got it. So, and just a reminder to the audience, if you have those who are watching this live, if you have a question, feel free to type it into the Q&A box, and we'll try and get to that before the end of the interview. So, Kirill, I want to kind of talk about how, when you listen to some of the podcasts, I listen to some of them, and a lot of them are very optimistic, saying this is a good thing. We're going to be, it'll be a culling of the herd, and the serious companies will be building products just like some of the big companies that we hear about all the time now kind of did in the 2018 downturn. So do you agree with that? Do you think this is a positive development for the crypto industry?
I'm an optimist personally, so I do agree personally that this is a positive development. Of course, if it hadn't happened and we wouldn't have known about it, then we would have thought that whatever was happening at the time is positive. But I do believe that a market shakeout, I mean, unfortunately in financial markets, fortunately or unfortunately, they're very cyclical. That on one end gives people opportunities to buy low or create something new when things aren't as as hot. On the other hand, people do tend to lose money when things like this, like what's going on now, happen. But I do think that it's overall positive. I do think that if it didn't happen now, for example, and some of the DeFi protocols that weren't well prepared continue to grow, then instead of Luna having however many billions that it had lost, imagine if it was double, triple that. Yeah. That would have been a worse situation. So I try to find optimism in everything. I also believe in, if we think back to like the .com bust and boom before that, and what companies came out of that. I mean, we had a bunch of search engines that didn't make it, but would we need them today? Probably not. We had a bunch of other companies that didn't make it, and the companies that did make it or started to build during those times, many of them are brand names and are around with us today.
Yeah, some of the largest companies on the planet now, with like Amazon and Google. So Yeah, I'm curious to get your take on. Obviously, you're really involved with MakerDAO, and I've been following the Celsius news, and I read that they'd paid back some of the outstanding debt with, I think it was Compound and Aave, and in order to kind of get the money back that they had had as collateral on, I think it was MakerDAO. So. Does that mean, what do you think that says about the DeFi? Like, I've read a few stories that say true DeFi, this has been shown that there's been no blowups with true DeFi. It's really been more the centralized crypto companies like the Celsius and BlockFi and others that have had the challenges. Do you agree with that, or what do you think DeFi has proven to be more resilient?
Well, DeFi is more resilient for sure. I mean, I think even in DeFi, there are elements of centralization. Not everything has been fully decentralized, and certainly that may pose issues in some cases. Sometimes I believe some centralization is not a bad thing in financial markets. Sometimes it can cause new efficiencies. It can have its benefits. But yeah, certainly with the platforms that you just mentioned, I mean, they were centralized, and it seems like, I wasn't on the inside, so I'm just kind of speculating based on what's public knowledge. But it seems like they haven't had the risk management in place, and they were perhaps growing too quickly for the amount of capital that they had and they were managing. And then obviously when things start going wrong, there's contagion, and there's many dominoes are falling at the same time. So with DeFi, more transparency, the communities involved, people are pointing out potential issues before they may happen. And as busy as some of the forums are, and as contentious as some of the conversations get, a lot of times things are caught way before they can cause an issue. Where in centralized companies, it's much more difficult, it's less transparent, and we have kind of the same old problems.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so what do you see when you're looking out of the crypto space today? What do you think are the most interesting products that are being built that's going to have, the biggest impact on the future of finance?
Oh, that's a good one. I think I'm involved in real world finance, on the blockchain. So I personally think this is one of the things that is going to continue to grow, and I think this is a very important development. There's many different aspects to it. It's the technology angle, right? Blockchain, if you think of blockchain just as a technology tool for transparency, speed, and other things, this is going to continue to grow, and TradFi is going to use blockchain as a tool, in effect, slowly becoming a little more decentralized themselves and a little more transparent in the process of them adopting all of these tools. I think that kind of the same thing partially happened when the internet was adopted, right? There was even less transparency. I mean, we had to wait for a paper report to come in from your fund manager or your financial advisor to see how you're doing, right? Today, we could see more or less real time of how different traditional assets are performing, and we could see various conversations and things like that. So I think that is going to decentralize some of the aspects of traditional finance, real world traditional finance. So I have huge beliefs in the way that things are going to expand there. I as far as other items, I think that I still believe that the transparency, the efficiency of the crypto and blockchain markets for retail investors are going to be there. For example, BlockFi, I mean, they were kind of the pioneer in that space. They're centralized, but they had issues, but it feels like they're getting through those issues, and they may be able to continue. I do think that both centralized and decentralized players that offer some kind of a superior return, or just a better way to invest money for everyday people are going to continue to grow.
Right. So then, how do we get? Do you think, what's it going to take to get from, for traditional banks or traditional financial institutions, where banks or not, from where they are today, which is really pretty much everyone is outside of the crypto space. I mean, some are dabbling, doing some things, but how are we going to get from where we are today to a decentralized world that you talked about? What are some of the steps that you see happening?
Well, I would say that what I'm actually seeing, and I was at your conference in New York City, I think back in May, and I've talked to a number of traditional financial institutions, banks, and others. And my sentiment was that as far as the sort of the top crypto assets like Bitcoin and Ether, maybe Bitcoin even more so, that is being adopted by TradFi lenders, at least across the board. I mean, pretty much every bank, small and large, that I've talked to has a strategy for enabling their customer, or they're building something to enable their customers to either borrow against crypto, use blockchain in some way, connect to the blockchain ecosystem, being able to transfer assets in real time. So I do think that TradFi is and banks are the most traditional and conservative institutions out there, potentially, right? And they're adopting crypto in general and blockchain. So I think that things are already happening. And now, in terms of decentralization itself, I mean, again, I don't think they're going to become decentralized like a DAO is. Right. I just think parts of their business are going to be decentralized because of the adoption of crypto and blockchain. They will be, a lot of transactions will be more visible. They'll probably want to open up new things and be able to kind of show the transparency of what they're doing to their customers and non-customers potentially. So I think parts of their business are that is going to be the first, the first part of decentralization, and then we'll see how it goes from there. I mean, I think we may, with proper legal, guidance and legal structures that hopefully the government will make available. For example, in the state of Wyoming, there's a DAO, registration possibility. If certain states or federal government or both allow financial institutions to take advantage of clear regulation, then we may see, fully decentralized DAO-style banks appear at some point. I'm not closing the book on that.
That would be amazing to have like a DAO-style bank with FDIC insurance. That would be something to behold. But clearly we're not, we have a little ways to go yet. So I want to talk about, KYC and AML just briefly, because I mean, you obviously, you said you have accredited investors coming onto your platform. Do you see, and obviously you're doing KYC, I imagine, obviously if you're allowing accredited investors on, you're doing KYC, but you're doing it, I imagine, in a centralized way that like all the traditional financial institutions are doing it. Do you see this moving to a decentralized kind of, is it going to be an on-ramp for decentralization in that area?
I believe so. I believe it could happen. I mean, I haven't seen that happen personally. It may exist already. What I've seen recently is some developments around how the KYC is handled, like a wallet-based KYC, where now your wallet is authenticated and KYC'd versus myself as an individual, the wallet will have like an NFT sitting in it that that tells the people that want to send something to your wallet or withdraw from your wallet that you are who you say you are, and you could be trusted, on that perspective. I see that happening, and I don't, again, I think the regulation has to be there for it to be, effective, because there's certain things like record keeping and other things that, contracts, like if it's a fully decentralized entity, we still have like the basic issue of DAOs being able to sign contracts, real world contracts, right, and have those be enforceable in the court of law. Once that challenge is overcome, and it may be, again, in some states, I think there's ways to do this potentially already, but it's not widely adopted. So I think if we start sort of at the beginning of the stack, of the legal stack, and work our ways up, it could certainly be done. And I think it could be an improvement. So I think it's going to happen. It's going to take a little time. Right.
Yep. Understood. So if you have a question for Kirill, now's the time to get it in. We've got a couple that I'll, let's do it now. These are some specific to New Silver. What differentiates New Silver from other lenders in the bridge loan marketplace?
Sure. So for our borrowers, I mean, we abstract the blockchain component. They don't interact with the blockchain or anything like that. So what we've done differently is we've built technology, Web 2 technology, that essentially speeds up the process of origination and underwriting. So when a borrower comes to our website, they can go through a quick few question application. We have a data set that we trigger, and then we can provide that borrower a term sheet within about 5 minutes of them starting the loan application. So they can get a conditional approval for a bridge loan with New Silver very, very quickly. And then we have a lot of other technology that we built. We have a product called Flip Scout, which essentially scouts the internet for listings, and then essentially displays these listings that may be a good, profitable project to real estate investors, whether it's a flip or a short or a long duration, buy and hold type of a project.
Is there anything you're doing new technology wise in the DeFi space itself, or are you just really using Maker's technology and Centrifuge, I guess?
Yeah, we're using Centrifuge's technology, and I think what we're doing is we're building additional tools to, specifically for the real estate use case. There's definitely, a few things missing from the stack. I mean, Centrifuge has a nice product, and they enable the real world assets to go on chain essentially. For real estate, there's some things that we're thinking about that would kind of close the loop, again, specifically on real estate assets, and then having it work more seamlessly with DeFi protocols and non-DeFi as well. There's definitely some things that we're working on.
Right. Okay, another question here. Any plans for future securitizations? If yes, will future issuance include non-New Silver originated loans?
So we are planning on asking the Maker community to increase our debt ceiling. So we're pretty much have used up the debt ceiling provided to us. So we will be asking the community in a short while to increase that. It's going to be a similar structure. There's definitely improvements. There's legal improvements. There's other improvements that we're making. And whether or not we will have non-New Silver assets in there, that is an open question. It's something we're thinking about. I think there is that opportunity. Nothing is concretely announced at this point.
So what is involved then in going out to the Maker community to because Maker is a DAO. So do you have to go out and be approved by a majority of the DAO, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a process. I mean, they have a pretty well-defined process at this point. They have a team that works with real world assets. And there's a process to essentially introduce yourself. Then there's a process to apply for a new vault. It's a fairly extensive process. There's underwriting and due diligence that the makers teams do. They have support along the way. So it's not an easy process, but it is it's a well thought out and an evolving process, and it's definitely worth taking a look at.
So then you're interfacing with, obviously you've got to be you're emailing people that are they typically are they anonymous, the people that you're talking with, or do you? How does, like, because the DAO, I mean, one of the things that I've, when I've been I've involved in a couple of DAOs and everyone's anonymous, it seems like. So is that true when you're going through this? Is a big deal for you guys. Are you dealing with anonymous people?
I would say mostly not. I mean, there's some folks in the forum that, they may not post their real name. It's really up to the individual, the people that we deal with, in terms of, due diligence and underwriting and other things. I don't believe any of them are anonymous. I definitely, they're real people, and we know them by name and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, because that's good. That would give me a little bit more comfort in dealing with them when you actually have have their real name and contact info. So let's close out. I'd love to kind of get your perspective on, we're going through this crypto winter. We don't know how long it's going to last. It could be, it could be over in 2 months. It could be over in a year or two. But I mean, I'm convinced, and I presume you are too, that we are eventually going to come out of this crypto winter. What do you think? How do you think we'll view this time period once we do come out the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you. I mean, I can't think of a crisis in our past in general in the markets, right? We've had many turmoils in financial markets over the years, and some of them last longer than others, but eventually it reverses, and the bottom is in, and people start buying again, and the economy starts growing and things like that. I think we're going to see the same thing here. How long is it going to take? Who knows? I mean, I think my personal thought is, probably another year and a half or so. And then how will we think about this? I mean, I think we won't think of it like we are thinking of the last crypto winter. I know that much. I mean, the last crypto winter was driven by pure hype and speculation, right? ICO boom and sort of just kind of the Wild West. It's getting, it's not 1850 anymore. It's maybe early 1900s or something like that. So I think there's still a lot of elements to be worked out, but I believe this one we will just look at as, something that was perhaps driven by the economy itself, right? The rates and things like that, and maybe a lot of people won't view it as such a bad thing, right? It's a shakeout, as you mentioned earlier. It's a shakeout of perhaps not so well organized companies and things, and we're going to be left with a stronger foundation.
Well, it's a great place to end it on, Kirill. Thank you so much for coming on today and being our first guinea pig here in the Crypto Winter interview series. So thank you very much to the audience for watching, and we'll be back. We actually got our next one happening tomorrow. So thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone. Thanks, Peter.